People are saying, let's go.
Okay. I think we're up and running. Maybe.
We can see them. I can see the monitor here.
Is there any sound? Let's see if we got that right this time. Yeah. Cool.
Justine is saying hello.
Hi,
Hello, Justine. That's a friend of Alpida.
Okay. This on.
Mics are quiet, Josh says.
That's probably just because we're not really talking.
Oh yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, the mics aren't quiet. We are just quiet. It's been a long day. Hey, Aaron.
So, I just want to see if this works with the music now, because last time we had issues with that.
We've already been requesting portfolios for the last few days now, so we've already found the portfolios to review, so we have them ready now. Like one of them is on the screen, so. And we'll just get started in a few minutes. Until then, we'll just take some like general Q&A questions until we're all ready and set up. Summer sale is until end of 2nd of August, so that's end of Sunday.
Perfect. Sound is working. Music is good. And
will you ever make game art tutorials? Funny enough, we were just talking about that earlier today. And we would love to go more into real time as well. Like personally for ourselves as well. I'm not gonna answer that, Aaron. Somebody was speaking to me in my dream again last night. Great.
Oh, no. What did we talked about doing something before the portfolio review?
Yeah, general Q&A until
right.
maybe for like 5-10 minutes or something, just so people can arrive and.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse us for being mildly non-functional today. This is like the 5th day of our summer sale. And we haven't really been sleeping or doing anything but working, so.
Also, I'm sleeping on an air mattress. Why are there always dinosaurs in your reviews? I don't know, is it possible to make a review without dinosaurs?
There's a dinosaur in this?
In general, there is. I don't think we have a dinosaur today.
Okay. So, not all the time, I guess, then. It's broke the mold.
Fact Archive is saying that I should make sure I don't join the VC server on accident. So I wouldn't say funny story, but I was going to bed last night and, tucked under my duvet and everything. And then suddenly I hear, "Hey, Henning, hey," from my computer. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Turns out that my PC had connected to the VC server on Discord, and a person there was being like, "Henning, where are you?" But this was just somebody speaking inside my empty apartment. It was beyond terrifying, and now I sleep with a gun in my bedroom.
What's the best environment course on Flip Normals?
I think it's the upcoming one by Emil Slegers.
So until that one arrives, I would check out also an Emil Slegers course by Victory 3D. Let me just find that for you. Oh, my browser.
We are from Norway and Denmark, and we're currently sitting in Denmark, in Copenhagen. Another question is, thoughts on CAD modeling? CAD modeling is awesome if you do CAD. I mean, it doesn't really have a big place in the entertainment world, unless maybe you're doing some crazy hard surface modeling or something. But in general, CAD modeling is highly, highly technical. Maybe something like Moi, Moment of Inspiration, can be good, which is more less hardcore.
This environment course is pretty good.
Will Morton ever make a sculpting kaiju tutorial? I don't know, Morton. Do you know how to sculpt a kaiju? Have you done that before?
Oh, I don't know. That's actually interesting. I don't really do that many creatures anymore. More focused on people. But yeah, I mean that could be interesting.
It would be so much fun to do a kaiju tutorial.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, we did one. That was like very first tutorial. Creature concepting in ZBrush.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the last movies as well we worked on. Have you guys already picked the portfolios you will be reviewing? Yes, we have. We just spent quite some time off before, just making sure we got some good ones. The portfolios we picked aren't really, it's not like the best or the worst portfolios. We're not here to trash or to praise anyone. It's more portfolios which generally there is a lot of educational content in. Maybe there are common mistakes everyone is doing, or there might be some specifics here. We want video and skin texturing. Well, so do I. I would love to make some skin texturing tutorials. Somebody on the Flipnovel's Discord thought you were a couple.
I don't think it's just on the Discord. I think that.
No.
What about this one, Henning? Do you think Substance Designer will get Udemy support?
Why would you want that?
Yeah, I don't really.
That's an interesting question.
Because I mean, what would that even do?
Yeah, I don't know.
You're making tileable maps anyway.
Maybe it's like you can load in your own custom model which has Udemy, and you can preview it on that. That sounds kind of cool.
But you're still tiling something, so
yeah, that's true.
It would just, yeah. I don't. I mean, unless you can tell me what you would use Udemy for in Designer, then I don't really see what the point is.
Yeah.
It took some time to understand what you guys were. I mean, like humans, or?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't understand that one.
Could you please make a video on how to use Xgen in production? Actually, we have almost a thing which is going to be in production soon here for introduction to Xgen, where we're going to have a really solid groom artist from London VFX make a proper groom tutorial on that. That's something that he will know far better than us, because you just need to have wrestled that thing in production. Do you think you can make a comment on how Corona is affecting hiring process for junior level positions? That's a tricky one, because right now, at least not in VFX, nobody's hiring. That's a field we know best, and it's also a bit tricky when it comes to it, because if you're working from home, it's a lot harder to do that if you're a junior. Working from home really shouldn't be done by a junior. That you just need a support team then. So I think that's gonna be interesting for the next year or so until it really starts to pick up, or whenever it picks up. Who knows when that's. Are they hiring for video games? Maybe. I mean, that hasn't been affected as badly, because then you can be, I guess you can be more, well, it hasn't really died off in the same way, because film kind of died off because you have to shoot something, but you can make a video game in theory 100% remote.
What was the last movie we worked on? For me, it was Harry Potter, whatever the Beasts one.
Johnny Depp one.
Johnny Depp one?
Yeah, he's like the Grindelwald.
Yeah,
Crimes of Grindelwald, I think.
That's the one.
Yeah, for me it was Venom.
Will this be recorded for later viewing? Yes, it'll be available once the stream is done. It'll just be on the channel.
You see, using character creation software is bad practice for a beginner. If you want to be a character artist, you should be sculpting everything from a sphere in the beginning. If you're in production, use whatever you want to, but if you shouldn't take any shortcuts in the beginning, at least, unless if you're like a lighting artist and you want to just get a quick character in there, go for it. But if you want to do characters professionally, don't take any shortcuts.
The Flipnovel ZBrush tutorials, while fantastic, are teaching me that I have no basic sculpting knowledge. Truth hurts. Oh, then just keep doing it, I guess. Then you'll get basic sculpting knowledge.
We have a tutorial coming out at some point in the future. It is called Introduction to Sculpting, which is supposed to focus on that.
Very soon. Right?
Yes.
You just need to finish it.
Yeah. Ellie saying that Venom was the movie my boyfriend and I became a couple with. Thank you for making it. You're welcome. I haven't actually seen the movie.
Yeah, and you made it.
Yeah.
You made that film. That's
yeah. But yeah, thank you for watching it. It was one of the craziest movies I worked on.
Do you guys consider yourself equal or greater than Ralph Grossetti or Hossein Diba?
So, Morton, would you say you're better than Ralph Grossetti after yesterday?
Why is that even a question? Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah, those guys were smashing us.
Any Blender physics tutorials coming up?
Probably
No.
not. Can you guys make a video tutorial on sculpting out levels of details in ZBrush? I don't understand the question. I think.
Maybe it's like, primary, secondary, tertiary shapes kind of thing.
We were definitely covering that in Introduction to Sculpting. What do you guys think about Chaos Group Phoenix? That's the effect solution, right? I don't really have any opinion on that.
Yeah, it probably does effects pretty well.
Yeah.
Being as it's been going for like 15 years or
Yeah.
something like that.
Oh hey, Neville is here. We promise that the iKit will be out soon, Farid. We're very sorry.
Also, he's delivered everything for it.
Yeah, it's all done. It's just because I haven't done it yet.
What 3D aspect do you guys specialize in? Well, for me, it's mostly like modeling and sculpting.
Yeah, for me it's sculpting and more texturing, creature texturing, by accident.
How do I change the oil in my car? That is very easy. You sort of like lift it up and then you just go to the bottom of the oil thing, you screw it up, boop, oil goes down. Then you fill it back up. Or take it to a mechanic who's authorized.
Literally not a topic Morton can't answer.
I mean, ask me anything. It'll be fine.
Which portfolios are you reviewing? We've already picked like 6-7 reviews. Yeah.
Stunning ones right here.
How far up do you go when you wash your face?
How far up do you go?
I swear to God. It's a bold joke. It's more like where does your head start and your face begin?
Oh, get it. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the meaning of life? I'm gonna go with cows.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
What do you think about Vitaly Bergolov's? Well, it's amazing. I mean, he's phenomenal.
In your videos, you're sitting so close to each other. I can't believe you're Scandinavian. It's a restriction of the camera. The camera makes it appear like we're sitting closer than we actually are.
Yeah. We're actually sitting like 5 meters apart. We're doing like separate takes. We're just comping each other in. Which area and industry has more available positions? That's a tricky one. I mean, to put it like this, I've never seen a Houdini artist be unemployed.
Ah, yeah. A good one.
When are we doing a boxing match?
Boxing match?
Should we start some portfolio reviews soon?
Right.
Now it's like 15 minutes in.
Alright, let's do
All
it.
right.
Welcome to the live Flip Normal's portfolio review, where we go through 6 or 7 portfolios live here on the channel. And everything will be available for viewing afterwards. So we've already pre-selected some portfolios that we think sort of represent a broader theme within portfolios. So, if we picked one of yours' portfolio, cool. And if we didn't, you can still learn a lot from this, because it's not so much about the specific thing about this sculpt or this model. It's more broad terms that you should be able to apply to mostly everything, really.
Yeah, you're gonna be able to see that there are we're gonna have the same comments over and over again, or on different models and different projects. So it's almost you can have a soundboard saying that simplify the model, look at the gesture. But there are a lot of similar things.
So just quickly before we move into it, make sure that you go to the Flip Normals marketplace if you want to up your skills or if you're wanting to learn something new. We're currently having a 40% sale on everything. So the first one here, Andrew has sent this portfolio, which I think is a pretty nicely structured portfolio. First one we're going to look at is going to be the old guy here.
Scowl.
Jesus, it's like I'm working on a computer from like the 90s.
Danish internet is not kind for us.
It's just, I don't know what's happening. Oh, it's the text editor.
Oh.
No, it's not.
that's a slow PC.
Yeah, this isn't great. Oh man, another technical glitch.
Great.
First there was the. Okay,
no, there we go.
Okay, we're good. We're good. No, okay, we're
Okay,
only
we're
good
not
for a
good.
second.
Okay, what if you zoom out a little so we can see the whole thing?
It doesn't really do anything with the images.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you scroll all the way up, then we can see if you can, then we can see the final image. So this is a bit annoying because we're seeing, you know, the whole thing and it's mega big, but at least
Fuck's sake, ArtStation, fix your shit.
Okay. So we looked at this one and we think this is a really cool project. I mean, it's just an overall solid render. The shading is cool. There are really nice details. It has a lot of emotion in it. Everything technically is really solid. So we figured we would take a look at this one and just review how it can be a bit better. Because when you're seeing this, there are a lot of details. Oh, there we go. Now we have a different browser.
I just keep going. I'll migrate
I'll
everything.
Morton is now migrating. So when we're looking at that render, there are so many details everywhere, and you can see that better when we're going into some more close-ups.
No, yours is paused.
Oh, okay.
They're seeing everything fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. If you scroll down a little bit on it. It's so slow. Okay, I promise this was going to be smoother if it wasn't that slow.
Okay, let's actually just migrate to Firefox because Chrome is being trashed.
Yeah, Chrome is being trashed. Alright guys, technical glitch. We'll be back in.
Jeez. Painful.
We did test this before. I'm very sorry.
Are there any fun facts? Say while I'm migrating everything.
Yes. The last person who received, I think it was a pension for the American Civil War, died like 2 months ago. That was in like the 1860s. The last person died from that like in May.
That's a good fact.
That's a pretty good fact. I think it's true.
It's like all of a sudden OBS and Chrome can't run at the same time. We do have some very extreme graphical challenges for Chrome here. Images.
Does anyone else have some fun facts while we're waiting for Morton to migrate everything to Firefox? No, they weren't. The person wasn't alive from the Civil War. They received a pension from the Civil War, which meant that I think it was their husband who was a fighter, and he was like they were super old when they married young or married another person.
That feels better.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
so let's do this again. If you can zoom out a little bit now, if even possible. Yay, okay, there we go. Okay, cool. So just to start again from this guy. We looked at this and we thought this was a really cool piece. It did really well in the rookies and overall it's a solid one. It's a nice sculpt, nice textures, nice shading, nice lighting. Overall, super solid piece. Then we started looking a bit more into it. If you scroll down a little bit to the zebra screen grabs. Then we started looking at this, and whenever I'm seeing renders, like really, really fancy renders, I always like to look at the models as well. Like this is what I was doing when I was reviewing some portfolios for DNEG, where they were looking for modelers. And it's so important to review this level, because now you're honestly seeing what's happening instead of seeing just all the fancy textures and everything. And what we were talking about when we looked at this is like everything is activated. Like there is no area of rest at all. Everything is set to 100. Gravity is a bit weird. And it's a little bit like you're inventing muscles or inventing shapes which don't really go anywhere.
Yeah, like an interesting one here, just to nitpick, would be like, see, look at the sternocleidomastoid here. Which connects sort of like on the mastoid process behind the ear. It's so loose and it kind of blends in with sheet of muscle across here. Remember?
Yeah, the platysma.
The platysma, right? So like it merges with the platysma, but the platysma also is like engaged, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't what like when the platysma fires, this isn't what it would look like. You got these indentations, almost like you have like inverse pressure, sort of like on the inside of his body, sucking all his skin like towards his insides. And like the lack of, I guess, not having a clear focus in terms of the details means that everything, like Henning says, is set to 100. All the wrinkles are treated with the exact same pressure. Everything has the exact same detail level, which means that it's very overwhelming to look at. Even though you're trying to, let's say you're going for realism, you want to do something more inspired by realism, you can still try to art direct it. So not everything has the same level of wrinkles, pores, just to keep it varied, to like make a clear focus. And the focus you usually want to go for is the eyes, especially in a composition like this.
So when how would you fix this? the way I would do it, I would have maybe kept the top layer. If you had layers in ZBrush, I would maybe kept the top layer when it comes to like all the pores and everything. But I would have gone down and simplified like the primary and the secondary shapes. Make sure you have really, really clean shapes before proceeding.
Yeah, and one of the things that makes it hard to, I guess, feedback a piece like this, right, would be, okay, cool, you got the primary shapes in there, head and major forms for the eyes and brows, nose and mouth. And then you definitely got your tertiary details with a lot of wrinkles and a lot of details, but it can be overwhelming because the secondary details, like all of these wrinkles, are sort of treated the same. So there's just like wrinkle there, wrinkle there, wrinkle there, wrinkle there, wrinkle there, wrinkle there. So it's just everywhere, right? So toning that down, I think, could do a lot for this piece.
Yeah, if you go all the way up again to the final render, this is where like the reason I had a feeling this was the case is because there is a lot of stuff hidden here. Like the issues we're talking about on a neck, you can't really see them in a render because it's out of focus and it's in shadow, and the ears are a bit blurred out and everything there. So if you're gonna do this particularly for like a modeling reel, I'm not sure what this purpose even is. It says here Andrew Cow is a hobbyist. And if you're doing it for illustration, you'll go for it. But if you're going for a modeling reel, while of course it's important to have like a stunning picture like this, like a really sexy picture, it's also really important that the model works standalone, where you're not hiding anything. It's more like you try to reveal as much as you can and just be honest about how solid the model is.
All right, let's move on to Kylie. I think that would be Kylie.
I would assume that's Kylie.
Yeah, let's go with Kylie. So Kylie has a really nice sort of varied stylized portfolio. And the first one I just wanted to look at was Taco from the Adventure Zone, which is really cool. It's really nice to see artists doing a really good translation, which is hard. It's really hard to translate from 2D to 3D, but it's, in terms of the pure transition and the execution of it, I would say definitely nailed that. You know, this is super close. It gets the feeling across. Like I can feel the character like all the way. Like nice gesture, it matches the reference, everything is pretty spot on. Where it falls short, unfortunately, I would say in the presentation, and that's also really important. So these just look like, well, these are ZBrush screen grabs, and I think it's a shame. Because if you just pimp it up just a little bit more, even just a render from within ZBrush, just do a BPR render with some more shadows, maybe do a little bit of compositing in Photoshop, just tweak the colors a little bit, brightness, contrast, all that. Or even take it into Blender or something, export the poly paint. Just to up it to the next level, I think that would really start to sell this even more.
Yeah, obviously we don't know the level of every single person here, but I'm reviewing this from that they are looking for jobs. The portfolio here is to get a job. And while that might not be true, that's the perspective I'm looking at it for. And when you're applying with this at a studio for a job, there are so many other applicants. And if you can make your work like 5% nicer, 10% nicer, you should do that. You should spend all the time, all the effort in order to just squeeze out as much as possible from each single project. it's such a lovely one. But if I was doing this, I would have taken this into, I mean, maybe you render it with like Blender or in V-Ray, Arnold, whatever it might be. Make something, put it in a proper render engine and just render it out. Just spend the extra time on that. I have a friend of mine, Jan Jinda. He was doing this for his modeling reel, which got him a job in London. He basically did his entire reel in he rendered in like a few minutes because he paid like a render farm to do it. So it was like he sent off a bunch of shots and then he just got it back instantly. So that's something you can do as well. Take the extra, go the extra mile. Make sure your work is presented properly. It will. I can promise you, it will pay off.
All right. Just wanted to go back quickly and then talk about this one. So it's just to talk about the difference between these two characters. And so this is just my assumption from all this, right? It looks like this is her own concept, and then she made it into like this a Super Mario Maker style. And why I think it's cute, it's like the difference I want to highlight here is sort of going by someone else's design who is clearly skilled at concepting and has done an amazing 2D design, and they're sort of doing your own stuff. While I wouldn't discourage people to do their own stuff, it's awesome. You definitely learn a lot from it. But depending on what it's for, you can either stick to that, but especially if you're doing portfolio pieces in terms of getting a job, I would definitely try to see if you could reach out to artists that have made amazing designs, and then you can translate those instead of focusing on doing your own stuff.
Yeah, I would say if you're doing personal work and you want to illustrate and have fun with that, go for it. 100% just make your own things. It's so much fun. It's awesome. But if you're going into the commercial market, you try to make money off your art, then particularly in a studio setting, try really try to get good concepts, because there's nothing different technically between this model and the last model we saw, but I think the other one is so much more appealing, and that is, like Morton said, probably stems from the fact that was a pre-existing concept.
Yeah, and again, because we've done a video about this in the past, it's like I don't want to discourage people from doing their own concepts, because that can be super helpful, but just keep it in mind for like what are you going for, and what is it that you want to get a job in or whatever. Was there anything else for portfolio to cover?
I think that was the main points about it, that essentially stick to, well, I mean, if it can be a lot of fun and to do your own concepts, but if you want to go commercially, go with pre-existing concepts, and make sure to spend a lot of time presenting your own work.
All right, then we have Josh's concept. We wanted to look at, piece, this house here to start with. And it's interesting looking at this. This almost looks like one of those like Mary Blair style illustrations. And I think the house here is by far the thing that's executed the best. Like, I really love the house. I love the shapes. I love the shading on it. I love the 2D feel. But when you look at it in terms of a piece overall, it feels out of place. Either the house is out of place or the environment is out of place. Because everything else is treated with, I guess, this brush of realism. Now, that might be the intention for the house as well, but that doesn't come across. This feels much more like a stylized 2D house translated into 3D, where everything else is sort of treated as a realistic forest.
Yeah, it looks just like pasted in there to me. It also, there is something weird about like the textures here as well. There was something off about the scale, because this here is supposed to be like, I don't mean like like a 10-meter tall tree or something based on the house, and it doesn't really feel like that to me. There's something with the trees in the background as well. They're very textured for being this far away as well. So I would also kind of pick a focal point and texture based on that. There's a lot of texture in a lot of different areas of this place, which can steal a lot of focus.
Yeah, and especially, Josh is actually in the chat.
Yeah,
that's
hey
fun.
Josh.
Like when you look at this, right, the close-up shot here, if I were to just judging this, obviously now I know, but looking at this looks like a rock to me. In terms, like, it doesn't actually look like a tree. So you have to make sure that whatever you're sort of like the treatment that you're applying to something, that you pay attention to it, especially as a whole when you're doing an environment piece like this. Another thing, I guess, would be the treatment of the grass. It feels like it was stuck on because it looks like all the blades of grass are just going vertical. So having some scattering in there, some bending, some more maybe height variation, having some taller patches of grass, more shorter patches of grass could definitely help that out as well.
Is there like a breakdown? There seems to be a little breakdown there. Yeah, this is also it says like original drawing by another person, which makes a lot of sense. Like, keep doing that. But when you are doing this, make sure that you understand the art style you're going for. Like, cause art style is also shape language. If I was to do this, I would have done the trees in the same art style as this, or done the house in the same art style as the trees. Which arguably it's a lot more interesting if you're doing. The house is honestly the most interesting part here, so I would have done the trees far more stylized. Oh, this is lovely.
That's cool to see the concept. Like, so you can definitely tell that the focus was on the house, like in the drawing, but then, and which I think Josh he's pretty much nailed that. The translation into 3D. There's some color things where this is dulled down compared to the original illustration, which is fine. But everything else around here sort of like, that seems like it was lacking in the concept because the house was the focus and therefore more freestyled in 3D.
Yeah, it's so important when you're looking at concepts, both for like works like this and professionally, that you stick to the concepts. That's one thing that every single supervisor will ask you at every single stage is, can I see the concept? And the reason is because they can't just say, oh, make this better, because that's who knows what that means. But if you have some clear reference, they can see your way of thinking. And when we look at this, it was like a fairly, like just a 3D version. It was a fairly generic like environment, but a very specific house. So that screamed out to me that was using a concept. I would also, when it comes to this as well, I would also go back to the emotional quality of it. Like, think, what do you want it to feel like? Like, looking at the painting, it has a very distinct feeling of it. It has a very distinct, like, magical, cozy feeling.
Yeah, this secluded house where there's only a little bit of orange light sort of hitting the house, right?
And then going in here, and it feels more like a, I don't know, it feels more neutral.
Yeah, it's very open. Like, this feels like, oh, you walked for hours through a forest. All of a sudden you get to a clearing and you see this house that's just hidden, and there's like a little witch living in there, but no one really knows it. This feels much more out in the open.
Yeah, because that's the reason we also talk about using our concept is because, not using our concept, using concept like this is because you'll do this a lot in the field as well. And then once you're being asked to show your concept, then they can see that, oh yeah, you replicated the concept really well, because that's honestly a huge part of the job, that is replicating the work somebody else has done in 2D or in rough 3D, getting the feeling across.
So think about that. Re-review this video, it's like, cause that gets quite long. I think that was it for Josh's portfolio. Oh yeah, just quickly for this one, I would tone down the fog. It feels like things are being hidden just in pure fog. So that was just like a quick note. Then
I think that was it for that, yeah.
Yeah, then we got this one, Shirty. And we want to look at the Magnetoys.
This is a crazy project. This is
it's a crazy piece.
This is the definition of overkill.
Yeah, it's a fun project. I can tell that they probably had fun doing this, which is always good.
Before we get into reviews of this, like I think it's so important to say really good things about it, because there's so much passion in this project. You can tell this is a person who just went all out. What Pokemon are you making? Yes, and then they made all of the Pokemon in one. So, people can always improve in their art, and they can improve, in their technical skills, but it's very hard to like teach somebody passion. So just, wherever you go in the future, just keep on this passion for these insane, awesome projects where you're creating this amalgamation of awesomeness.
I also just want to go back to that, especially with Josh and the other artists that we reviewed in the beginning here. It's like, we're not going at these portfolios and just going like, well, this was shit. No. We're just giving you the constructive feedback there of like what you could improve. Especially with Josh, that was a long one. It's not because everything with your image was wrong. It's just things to think about in order to improve in the future.
And like with everything we're saying, take it or leave it. Like if you disagree with what we're saying, then don't do it. Feedback is always something you get, and you don't have to accept everything if you disagree.
So when it comes to this one, we looked at it, and my first reaction was like, okay, I wasn't actually quite sure in terms of the Blastoise part what wasn't working for me. So I like scrolled down and I tried to find like a gray render of it, and I couldn't. There's this with the wireframe on, it's spinning, and it's not as high res as the other images. So that's one of the things I would be missing from something like this, especially if you're submitting for like a character portfolio or character position. Just break it down. Definitely show wireframes as well, but show something clean so you can better judge it, especially when it's this detailed. Now, in terms of, go up again. There we go. In terms of the Blastoise, I think I've sort of nailed it down to, again, we got the primary shapes in there, and we've got some details from the tertiary shapes. But like with many other things, we're lacking some kind of secondary detail pass. Right, we've got the chest in there, so that's clearly defined. But this whole area is kind of lacking. And it's weird because with Blastoise, thinking of like a turtle, the very organic and squishy legs are coming out of another organic and very squishy body, which doesn't really jive with the fact that it's a hard shell, right? It's supposed to be protective, but it's treated exactly the same. The shading is exactly the same for the squishy parts as they are for the hard shell parts.
It looks like his stomach, which would be still hard shell on a turtle stomach, has pecs.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
I would have separated out those pieces. If you go up a little to his to where you can see his face, there we go. Yeah, it looks also like his mouth is, if I can draw. Yeah. Like it looks like his mouth here is also parallel. Like this line here is parallel to this line here, instead of it being like going into a triangle. This is a bit hard without drawing on the screen, but you really don't want your mouth to be purely a triangle. I'm sure Morton can do some magic and actually draw on top, because I think you understand what I'm saying.
I think I am.
Yes.
So right now it's sort of going down like this. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But what we actually are looking for is more like maybe something like this. Is that what you're...
No, let me actually...
Damn it. It's like from a strange angle here.
Okay. So this is what I mean, because otherwise the mouth is going to be parallel, just going up and down, instead of it like pivoting from one point.
Yeah, so right now it's sort of connected here, and it kind of looks like the mouth would be moving down like this.
Exactly.
Instead of actually having a pivot point here and then rotating this way when they're sort of opening the mouth.
Exactly. But also I would have simplified this a lot down as well. Like I said, you're going to hear us say that a lot. Like the head doesn't really feel connected to the body as well. And it feels like there are like 6 different art directions going on at any one time. We had a video recently where we talked about basics versus fundamentals, and I think this is an artist who has very strong basics, meaning they have very strong technical 3D skills. The shading is fine, and there's nothing wrong with the topology or technically the textures or how anything is set up or anything like that. But the fundamentals are a bit lacking in the sense that the shapes are all over the place. There isn't really too much thought behind the art direction. When we look at the hard surface elements, they feel like a completely different like entity compared to the art direction on the body. Like they're so sharp, and yet they have this like rusted texture as well. So it doesn't feel like the texture and the model, it doesn't feel like it's a coherent unit.
It feels like the artist forgot to hit smooth on the hard surface parts, like because they're so clearly defined. They might actually have word I'm looking, edges wow, edges close together to make it hard looking, but you see a little bit of a bevel on this edge, but not a lot. And so everything in terms of the hard surface is also treated, again, it's the same issue with the shell and actual Blastoise. They're sort of treated the same. So everything is hard edge. Even these parts here, it's like swing, 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 It's a hard sound, I guess.
Morton is an expert at sound effects.
So I would probably try to smooth some of those things out, especially when it is like it's worn metal, right?
I would also simplify it down as well. Like even when you're looking at this now, I didn't actually we reviewed this before the video, but I didn't actually see until now that they're like magnets, because there are so many of them. There are so many colors. There are like 8 colors, like red, blue, and all that. I would have maybe simplified it into like one big magnet there, and just so it's easy to read. You have like the glowing eyes. I think there are like 5 of them at the screen right now. And then you have, well, 7 because you have 2 in the blasters as well. So there are a lot of glowing things. There are a lot of metal things. There's a lot of hard surface and organics intertwined. So I would really, really simplify this down.
Yeah, and one thing you got to keep in mind, especially when doing designs like this, is that you want to art direct it. You want to guide the viewer, you want to guide their eye and tell them, basically, force them to look in certain places, right? And with this, because there's so much going on, it becomes scattered in terms of where the viewer is actually going to be looking. They're like, okay, on the chest, on the eyes there, then here, especially glowing elements, right? Glowing elements really draw your focus in. So try to keep that in mind as well.
If you squint your eyes, where are you looking, Morton?
Yeah, I'm like looking there, and there.
Yeah. Same. But this is an artist who, like I said, obviously has very strong technical skills and would benefit tremendously from using an existing concept, because then you don't have to design something yourself, and you can use all your strong technical skills with an already existing strong base. Combine really strong technical skills with a phenomenal design, and you have an absolutely killer piece.
All right, let's go back. Yeah, I think you can apply those principles to, the other characters as well.
If you look at this one as well, just before I leave, I don't think you've seen this one. I just quickly review this beforehand. This is a good example of what I see in a lot of students who's doing characters. If you scroll up a little bit, then here, what I would recommend this person to do in this case is not necessarily just to look at an existing concept or something. I would recommend to spend some time on figure sculpting, like properly going into figure sculpting, understanding how volumes work together, learning anatomy, learning gesture and weight and balance. Also, if you scroll down a little bit now, like if you look at then like you looking at a face as well, everything is just textured. And this is kind of the same issue as we had with the other one as well, where everything is just in focus right now. If I were to work on this, I would have had a lot of details maybe around the eyes, and I would have softened off all the other details so that it's not so prominent. It's really like you want to control where the viewer looks. The viewer shouldn't be able to look everywhere. You are the artist. You control where the viewer is looking. It's one of the amazing gifts as an artist. You can actually control them.
Yeah, and when it comes to the pure texturing part of this, if you were to just look at the albedo for this, right, all you would really see is brown with just hints of red scattered around. And usually, if you have a really tight model, good secondary details and some good details in general, high-res details, you can actually get away with doing a quite, let's call it blurry and lacking texture for it, because all the other details were sort of supported. But in this case, you really, because everything is treated again with the same frequency, the lack of albedo in terms of the texture, the definition in the texture really starts to shine through. You got like a little bit of gradient there, a little bit there, a little bit there. So upping the texture quality for this, like actually going in, painting some more and figuring out what would this actually look like in terms of colors, I think could really help up the quality of this piece as well.
It really feels a bit like, if you scroll up just a little, scroll up.
For fuck's sake.
There we go. It feels a bit like it's almost like a toy model from the 80s, where the bicep feels like one part, the forearm feels like one unit, the hand is one. Here it's almost like you can see the hand being attached to the arm. And it just feels like a modular piece without thinking that's actually the intention. It's almost like the head could go in here. You can have the torso be cut off here so that you can actually mold it and physically create it. But I think that will be solved by thinking more about the overall gesture, thinking about how the shapes flow into each other. I know that's very, very hard. What we're talking about now is not just like a quick fix. That's like this is deep fundamentals, and this takes a long time to learn.
Yeah, I mean, for this, it's like keep going with this and just keep at it, because the more of these pieces you do, the better you're gonna get.
There's also somebody here has a comment that it looks like the leg is missing, and that's also a bit of a weird one. Like it's like just from a posing point of view, it's almost like it has a leg which has been amputated. I guess that leg is hidden behind the screen right leg, but I would have made that visible somehow. Maybe it goes behind to the screen right behind it or something. But the posture is just, yeah, there you can actually see the leg. It's just a bit weird from
it's
the
like,
angle.
You understand that he's supposed to be running, but because they haven't practiced form and gesture enough, it becomes this static pose, even though it's supposed to be dynamic. Like everything is just, like it actually kind of goes in a straight line, even though there's some curvature to it. It doesn't actually feel like the piece is frozen in time, and it was supposed to be moving.
Also remember that that everything has fat and skin. This has a little bit of skin on top, but it looks, like particularly looking at his butt now, that was where I noticed it. Where like remember that fat is very much a real thing. Even if you're doing somebody crazy buff, even if I was doing Bane or something like that, then you would still add like a layer of fat to the character, which just makes it feel a lot more organic.
All right, move on. I think, yeah, that's about it. Before we move on, make sure to head over to the Flip Normals Marketplace. We're currently having a 40% sale on everything. So if you're keen on leveling up your skills, or if there's anything you've been eyeing on the Flip Normals Marketplace for a while, make sure to head over there and pick it up.
Like the Flip Normal skin kit, trademarked.
Yeah, that would help here.
I think it almost looks like he's been using it.
Well.
A bit too much.
All right, time for some joy. This was looked at. The Old Man. Now, I think this is a great piece to feedback, because like we talked about in the beginning, this is something that with a lot of the other pieces here, you can take this and use it for your own pieces, right? So this is a common face, I would say, when people start sculpting and they try to interpret the shapes and what the face actually looks like and what the details of the face look like. So from the title, Old Man, I think we can infer that they were trying to sculpt an old man.
Probably.
And you get that across. You get the basic understanding that, like the basic idea across, that this is definitely an old man. But the old man-ness is sort of isolated to a few areas, and it doesn't feel like a complete piece yet. So again, we've got a clearly defined head shape that needs work on the proportions, but that's fine. You're starting out, you gotta figure out where you're going. You've got a really defined cheekbone and some wrinkles that go up and meet the cheekbone instead of, like, I feel like connecting sort of like with the nasal labial fold. But the biggest issue for me here is that the treatment of the skin is very much not like an old person. We've got indications for it here under the backs of the eyes, but it's a very sort of, they haven't looked at reference of what eye bags actually look like in old people. Like here, it just feels like crisscrossing in terms of what the skin details are supposed to look like. So I think actually getting in some reference, which they might have looked at, but then really trying to study those references and replicating that would help a lot.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. Looking at his neck as well, for instance, it looks like this is the smoothest neck of any person in the world. You got to think about the whole sculpt as a cohesive thing. You can't just focus on the eyes. You have to focus on everything. For instance, one of the things we keep talking about as well is that before you start going crazy with stuff, you have to get the skeleton in there, then it's the muscles, and let's just focus on those for now. Right now, there isn't really any focus on the skeleton. And how do we know that? We're looking at the collarbones. They're connected. It looks like a weird metal wire going across them. And then you have like the sternocleidomastoids, the muscles, which goes from behind the ear to the sternum. They're just kind of floating there. I'm sure Morton is going to do a very nice little draw over now. So I'm excited about this.
Keep going.
So yeah, this is the sternocleidomastoid, which goes down here. and goes from down into the sternum and into the clavicles as well. And if this isn't properly defined, then everything looks a bit weird. We have the nasolabial fold going around here, which has to be really clearly defined. When it comes to old people, it's so important, or anyone really, but particularly older people, it's so important that you get the weight of the skin. Skin has a lot of weight, and it becomes a lot less elastic as you age. So really get in the weight of the skin.
What I would probably do here is maybe like thicken the neck up a little bit, even though, you know, they're old, it kind of feels like the head is sort of attached to this, right? So I would thicken up the neck a little bit, then run the traps out from here. Also, just in making this maybe a little bit wider to support the face a little bit, I think could help just to ground it a little, because this becomes very floaty when you're just focusing on the head and then just a little bit of the shoulders here. In terms of the clavicles, giant clavicles there, but they would run, you know, up there, connect behind the shoulder there, connect to the shoulder, and then sort of down.
We have actually an interesting question here, which is like, would you use like a cloth brush in order to get like the weight of the skin? And I wouldn't
No.
do that. Like it's you don't want to cheat those fundamentals. You want to understand them properly. If you try to use tools to even if you could get the same result, particularly for this, you really want to get the understanding of that part of it.
Yeah, don't rely on automation to fix the things you're not good at. I guess that's like you should be able to understand that and get to that result. I'm not even sure a cloth brush could do that. Maybe a little bit, maybe you could add some details, but don't rely on that for sure.
Also, just technically, I'd want to add some more resolution to it as well, because you can see that the forehead wrinkles are getting very low res. So I really recommend, like, you know, I don't say this often, but subdivide it more. So
yeah, or maybe just locally.
Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind is also just like the shape of the head. It's like it's actually an actual box here. Like, it wouldn't be like that. You would probably round it off a little bit more, right? And
what's crazy about skulls though is like I've kind of stopped commenting on the shape of skulls after I saw just a lot of like the differences in skulls. Some people have crazy skulls. Like, I mean, I agree with all the notes there. It's just that I'm sure you can find a person with a boxy skull like that. It's crazy. Another note as well is that when you're doing different people of different ages, you have to think about their gesture. If you're doing somebody who's really young, you would make their gesture like really elastic and really fit. And then if you're doing somebody who's older, you would shift their balance so that their gesture becomes way more crooked as well. If I were to do like if I was making a guy who was like in his 90s, I would put his head quite a lot forward, almost like he's like carrying all the weight of his body like in his neck. So you can really tell like he's in pain. This is just a really powerful tool to get emotion across.
Okay, one quick thing I just want to address. Someone is talking about sculpting cloth as an exercise. It's just to like contradict exactly what I just said, but it's very specific for cloth. Definitely try it. Do some cloth sculpting. Figure out the principles. I don't know, was it like 3 or 4 types of drapery or like way that cloth sort of falls that you can have. I can never find that diagram, but it exists somewhere. Do that. Try to study it for a bit. Do some studies with it where you actually sculpt cloth. It's a nightmare of a challenge to make it look good, which is often why a lot of sculpted cloth looks stylized. If you want to achieve something that looks realistic or even stylized that you want to sort of pimp up a little bit, throw it into Marvelous Designer. It takes half an hour to an hour to get familiar with the program. It takes a few weeks to get good at it in terms of the tailoring and stuff. But it's definitely worth it if you're doing a lot of clothing for your characters.
Yeah, there is a level where you do want your software to do the job for you. A cloth sculpting is a miserable business. The way I've been doing cloth sculpting is that Morton takes photos of me in awkward positions when I have like capes and stuff on, and then we try to sculpt it in 3D.
Yeah, and someone is mentioning here that the newest version of ZBrush will have cloth simulation. While it probably will, I mean, that's what they said in the preview, it's not going to be a replacement for Marvelous. So Marvelous is a dedicated tool. It's just like sculpting in Maya is not a replacement for ZBrush, right? Use the tool for it, that's the best. You can definitely, probably, use the ZBrush tools, the clothing brushes or whatever, to add details to it, but I would rely on Marvelous Designer for that. I think that was them.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. Then we have
Merav?
Merav. Go with that. And I actually want to talk about the wolf here first, because a lot of it is sort of like, there's a great base, right? You know, it's got the shape in there, and definitely you get the point across that it's a wolf. Just looks a little crazy, like a little too starey. It's like it's missing something. It's like the skull, the shape of the skull isn't quite right. Everything else, I think the bulkiness of it, the feel of the front, sort of the weight to the back, I think it feels pretty nice. But where I think it falls short is, again, the softness when it comes to, especially the fur for this, like those kinds of details. It's almost like she's tried to rely on the textures. You can get a feeling for it that there's like individual hair strands in here in the texture, to rely on that for the fur, but then try to sculpt it up a little bit with some major shapes. But those major shapes almost feel like an afterthought. Like, okay, let's put a clump of fur here, a clump of fur there, and a clump of fur there. If you're doing something like that, especially if it's stylized, it has to be executed with a lot more intent, and sort of like this feels more like like I said, like an afterthought.
I thought this was an interesting portfolio, because I went and looked at the entire portfolio, and she has some really lovely drawings, and it looks like she's a student at the moment. So, you know, without knowing this person at all, I just blindly assumed that this is a person who's been drawing for some time and has pretty strong art fundamentals, and then has been thrown into 3D and is now struggling a bit with the tools. That was at least what I saw when I was looking at this, where a lot of people who are students, they wouldn't be able to sculpt something this well, but they're still struggling with the tools, like Morton was saying, you know, really getting in the shapes of the fur and all the specifics of it. You go to the other piece.
This one.
Now, this is an interesting one, because we're at a level in 3D where at this point there isn't necessarily something which is like crazy broken. We're not looking at this and like, okay, clearly you gotta just fix the plane changes between these two different shapes. Instead, it's more that you just need more experience, and that is really annoying to get as feedback. Like, you just have to do it more. But we just figured instead of just saying, yeah, just do more 3D, we're talking about how can you improve it. And what I'm thinking is that you have to improve every single stage of it. First, you could make maybe the shapes a little bit cleaner. For instance, looking at the eyes, I would have added like a stronger caruncula and made like the corners of the eyes a bit more clear. Maybe like in general, the shape there is pretty decent, but then I would have made the hair a bit more high poly as well. You can actually see where the polygons go right now, and just make every single step a little bit better. But for this one, the biggest thing for me would be the lighting. Go up to the top one there. Yeah, the lighting is almost a bit creepy. It's like a frontal lit character, and that just makes it look very upsetting. So I would have relit this if I was Merav, or how you pronounce her name. I'm terribly sorry. Then I would have looked into more lighting fundamentals and try to look at portraiture lighting when it comes to like real world photography as well. That's a good fundamental skill to look into, because they've solved this issue. For this, I would have maybe used like a regular 3-point lighting with like a strong key light from the left, a strong rim light from the right, and then like a little fill light from the left as well.
Good.
So rim light there.
And some shine there maybe, and then you have like I was thinking this is actually the fill light.
Ah, okay.
Fill light there. Then maybe you have a light coming from the side, like this maybe.
Yeah. And
then maybe one from the back that sort of sits back here, like a larger one, but lower intensity to shine here. This.
Then
the curvature of the face.
You can really tell a story through lighting. For me, lighting is one of the most important parts, and it's so often overlooked. This is the part where you're really getting the emotional quality down into your piece. You can make a piece go from really lovely to really scary just by like changing the intensity and the colors of like a few lights here and there.
And what I will say though, I think the execution of the face in general is very nice. Like, it's nice and squishy, it feels young. I would probably make the eyes a little bit smaller, but that's maybe a stylistic choice. One of the issues I have with this here is sort of like, so it's a girl, it's a little girl. The lashes feel like they stick out a lot, but in general I think the shapes are there and they look pretty good. I like the separation between the teeth there, so there's definitely personality, and it's a very sort of cute looking piece. Just to quickly address something, Mira was actually in the chat and she was just asking about the wolf, what she would do about the fur, and I would just do hair cards. So what you have, go back here real quick to the wolf here, you have the bulk of mass for the wolf, right, in terms of the shape, and then do hair cards on top of this or fur cards on top of that. It's going to be an absolute nightmare to do, but that would sort of be, I guess, the next step. Either that or maybe like, oh, come.
Yeah, it depends how stylized you want to go, and also if you...
What the fuck? One too many O's.
It depends if the goal is to go stylized or if the stylization is more like a crutch to be on.
Yeah, this is a terrible reference. Just ignore that
it's
as a
way
reference.
too stylized, and just ignore the first link Morton found. Another way as well is to go for like, well, either you have to go for like more stylized or you have to go for full on realism. If you're going for more stylized, like then I would have sculpted up the fur, like actually like in a more sculptural sense, and simplify the colors a bit, maybe simplify the shapes a little bit for the sculpt. Or if you're going for full on realism, then like it's action time. Unfortunately, then it's like, you know, properly do the external hair cards and just go for it. Spend like 2 weeks on that and then like scream into a paper bag because it's action. But then at least you're going for the realism.
Another thing here is I do like the skull, but one of the issues is it's clearly just placed on top. I mean, you can even see it intersecting with her skull as well. So sort of like fixing that, you know, having it lie naturally on top. But I think for me, I really like the face shape and it feels squishy. Like Henning said, it would be the lighting. Relighting this, I think, could do a lot. So yeah, I would focus on that.
It's not often you have a piece where you can just go, yeah, has the weird trick. Just do the fix. Just buy the lighting scenes. But you know, like there is actually like a fix for this.
And then we have Jesse. So this isn't so much a let's go in and review one of these faces, because we've covered a lot of these things. And I actually think this latest one looks pretty great. It's more that it's only faces, basically. There's some more full-fledged characters here, but it's face. And
face with a beard and face with long hair.
So I would probably try to vary this portfolio a little bit. Try to branch out, do some other things, maybe figure out some hard surface stuff, see if that's for you.
Yeah, she said she actually just bought the lighting scenes yesterday.
Oh,
so
nice.
so amazing. I mean, that's the entire point of that product, where it's like you're supposed to be able to drag and drop your model in there, so it looks great, and then you can just focus on your sculpting. Yeah, I mean, feel free to like join the Discord or something and post updates there. I think it's so important when you're making a portfolio. Now, this is just general portfolio, is to figure out what is the purpose of your portfolio. Is the purpose to make cool personal pieces, which are, you know, they're for you, they're not for anyone else, but you just want to show them off. Then just do whatever you enjoy doing. But if, like we said before, we will consider this, at least I will consider this more of you're looking to get a job. And then if you are looking to get a job, you have to make a diverse portfolio. There is just no way around that. If you have 10 characters in your portfolio, but they're all bearded men, you know, that's not great, because the recruiter goes and be like, yeah, I know you can do a bearded man, but can you do a non-bearded woman? and you go like, I can do a bearded woman.
A bearded woman.
And then, you know, then you're just in trouble. So instead of doing 10 pieces which are the same, get some real variety. Like find like kind of the fence posts of your profession where you want to be. Let's say it's for characters. Then the fence post is, well, first you have to make a character. It has to be a character what you're doing. But the variety within that can be it's hard surface. It can be masculine. It can be feminine. You can do a masculine female and a feminine man. Like that doesn't matter, but show the range within it. Like this is such a cool piece as well. I really like this one. It can also be it can be between characters and creatures as well. So you can do animals, you can do a human. So get the full range of it. Maybe one of the characters is a robot, so it's more hard surface. So really figure that out. And also figure out what art style you want to go for as well. Like what we're seeing now by Maria Pavlova is obviously far more stylized, which is amazing. I really like this, but it might not be commercially great. Like if you have only this kind of stuff in your portfolio and you're going for a highly realistic game or VFX reel or VFX job, then they're going to be like, cool, realist or art style, but can you technically do the job we want you to do? And that could be a bit problematic.
Just to answer Tech YK's question, is like saying that's a very contrasting opinion. I usually hear if you want to work at Blizzard, only make Blizzard stuff. And there's a point to that. You also, like, generally, when you're just starting out, don't tailor your portfolio to a specific company because you're probably not going to get that job. Like, if you're just out of school, it's very unlikely you're going to get hired at Blizzard. Sorry to break it to you. It's just, you're never going to get your dream job as, like, the first one unless you're some kind of prodigy, right? So definitely explore different things, explore different styles, but as you get more into it, let's say you want to work for Blizzard, then looking at what they do and making sure that you're actually able to do it and including that in your portfolio becomes really important.
Yeah, nothing I said contradicts that at all. Like if you only want to work at Blizzard and you'll be in your dad's basement until you get to Blizzard, then just go for that. But it still stands. Don't make 6 generic Warcraft orcs. Make an elf, make an orc, make a human, make, whatever it might be. Just have variation within the field you're going for. Like I said, find the fence posts, find the parameters of what you want to do. And in this case, that's Blizzard. And then from there on, then you figure out what is the variation you need to show within that. My point is simply that there's no point in repeating yourself, and you do have a finite amount of time. So let's say each project takes you like 4 months to do. Don't waste 4 months by doing the same project just from scratch again.
Just wanted to highlight this tutorial from Conrad. This is just what we're talking about in terms of hair cards. We've got fiber mesh that I think is being converted to stuff in XGen, which is also a way to do it. Not hair cards per se, but it's actual hair.
Yeah, Aaron is also saying that. I don't often agree with Aaron, but once in a while he has a point. He's saying that you can always change later on. Careers are long, and that's true as well. I worked with people who like on Pacific Rim, we worked with an artist who made kaijus there who just came from Disney.
Yeah,
like that. Like he came from doing like stylized stuff on like Tangle or Wreck-It Ralph or something like that.
So Tech YK has another question. What's your opinion on using base meshes?
Ooh, do you have a controversial opinion there, Morton?
Yeah, very controversial. Use them. Use them when it makes sense, and it usually makes sense. Unless you're doing a tutorial where you're creating something from scratch, or you're challenging yourself to do something from scratch because you want to learn. Let's say you're doing anatomy, you do that from scratch from a sphere. But if you're doing client work, if you're working in production, basically if you're doing anything where speed is a factor, use base meshes.
Are you optimizing for learning or are you optimizing for quality? That if you have 20 hours to do a project, you will get a lot further if you're using base meshes. I mean, when I'm optimizing for speed, I am going full on optimizing, or when I'm optimizing for quality, I'm going full on speed. Then I have a base mesh with final topology. I have all the references in the world. I have 3D scans, and the base mesh has also UVs as well. So, and I might also have pre-made maps for it as well. Like in production, you always have like using the same UVs for all the humans, so you can kind of reuse a lot of maps. Maybe you can reuse the same specular roughness map with the color maps, which you can keep grading between them. So I mean, honestly, if you're doing it for a commercial project, then like you're in war. Use whatever tools you see necessary, as long as it's not like outright theft or something. There's no such thing as cheating.
Josh is also asking, do you guys use KeyShot at all? Is it worth it, or is Blender just as good? They're different. KeyShot is great if you just want to go back and forth between ZBrush and then having something to render out in KeyShot. You know, it's very different because KeyShot is just based on HDRIs. You throw on some materials and you can get some quite realistic results. Whereas in Blender or any other 3D software that has a render engine, you can set up custom lights, change everything about the lighting setup, still combine it with HDRIs, but you just have a lot more freedom there. I usually just use Eevee now, actually. I just export my meshes from ZBrush into Blender, throw it into a quick lighting scene with Eevee, and then I call it done.
So since we are still in a portfolio video now, do you have any general tips for building a portfolio? Or is it too late in the evening for that?
Make it good. No.
That's a great one.
Make sure that it's well presented. Like, take it seriously. Don't just don't make it too scattered where you have like 20 different pieces that are mediocre. Select 3 or 4 pieces that are top notch. If you only have 2 amazing pieces, take those. If you have like 2 amazing pieces and 2 mediocre pieces, scrap the other 2. Just focus on your very, very best work.
Assume that if you get to the interview stage, that they will look through your portfolio and they will look at your weakest piece and being like, what is this? And you're like, oh, but it's actually like 2 years old. And you're like, yeah, but why are you presenting this as this is something you want to pitch us? You know, you don't want to be in that awkward position where you have to, you know, I've been there. That's why I'm saying this, because it is weird when you put something on your resume and you just haven't removed it later on.
What would you tell a person who loves to do environment and character design for their portfolios? Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Ooh, that is a very, very tricky one.
I would probably choose at some point.
It's very tricky.
Figure out which one appeals to you the most, that you would like to work with, like that you want to get a job for, because that's a position that is very hard to combine. Like, well, you can't really, unless you're in a very small studio that allows you to do more things, then maybe. But especially for bigger studios, that wouldn't really fly.
This is a great question. Do you have any advice on imposter syndrome after getting into a big studio?
Oh man.
So imposter syndrome is a tricky one. That's, for people who don't know, that's when you feel that you're sitting in a studio and you're sitting in a spot and you feel that you're a genuine fraud. You feel that, you know, you got here out of a fluke and any moment they're going to figure out that you're actually trash and they're going to kick you out there and back to Belgium with you. And I know that because I've felt that at every single job I've had. It's a tricky one. I think what helped for me is to realize that the studios, they're not going to make a mistake at hiring. You know, when you hire a junior, they know what a junior is. A junior is not a person who can do all the things. You need support as a junior. So if you're sitting there in a studio and you feel like the worst person, well, that kind of makes sense because you are the least experienced person. It's not just about like being able to model something. I had this when I started NPC. I didn't know the pipeline at all. And it was so frustrating because I came just from Framestore. I could model all the things in the pipeline there. And you came there and you just don't know how to speak even because you don't know how to do anything. You're in a spot where you'll be given a task at a studio, which might be well below your actual skill level. It might be like, hey, model like a tree, like a simple tree. And you're like, of course I can model a tree. But because the feedback rounds and all the soft skills needed and the briefs and the feedback and all that, you feel so terrible. Just know that everyone has it like this. This is something that every single person experiences when they're getting into a studio. It's a normal thing. I met a bunch of seniors who's like, oh boy, they're going to fire me tomorrow because they're going to realize that I don't know what I'm doing.
Here's a fun fact for you. I get that every day. You know, when we're sitting here, we're doing tutorials, we're creating new content every single time. Even if I'm just doing personal pieces, I'm like, oh shit, is this good enough now? We're like, will people now know that I'm actually a fraud, even though I'm not a fraud? You know, it's like I know how to teach, I know how to create, but there's always that little voice in your head that always goes, oh, this time they're definitely going to be catching on to you, and this time it's not as good as last time, so you're done now. So I don't know, for me it happens all the time. It's just knowing about it helps a lot, because then you're like, you know that you can work through it and you do become better as an artist. That really helped me.
I was recently doing a personal piece for the first time in ages, and it was this like little horn demon thing, because that's my thing. And starting off with it, the concept, I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. And then I started retopoing and texturing it, and then I just lost all faith in myself. And it's like, man, I swore I knew how to do this. I did it for film. Jesus Christ, why can't I do it now? And then I just kept working on it, and I just kept spending some evenings on it and some few weekends here and there, and it just kind of gradually came together at a point. But we've been doing this for years and years and years, and we still feel like this. I think if you don't necessarily feel like an imposter, then I'm not sure you're pushing yourself hard enough. Then you should maybe change company or change the people you surround yourself with, because it keeps you on your toes as well.
Just take yesterday, right? I watched this video from Rafael Grossetti where he sculpts a male torso, real time, 10 minutes, and I'm like, damn, okay, I gotta try that, because I know I can't do that. And his sculpting techniques look really interesting. One of my big issues is that I'm just slow. I'm a slow sculptor. I'm very methodical. I have a very specific set of rules sort of I set up in my head for how to approach sculpting, which means that I can get to pretty much any result I want now. And by the end of it, I won't be hating myself, because I'll be like, okay, it actually looks fine. But it is very time consuming. So I was watching this video from Rafael Grossetti, and I was thinking to myself, okay, let me try and do that similar approach, similar type of sculpting. If any one of you goes to my Twitter and see my latest post, that's the result of it. And keep in mind, I know anatomy. I'm not great at anatomy, I would say. I was like, I'm decent. I can sculpt the body. I know about gesture. I can make it into the pose that I want. But after doing that yesterday, I was like, okay, I'm just quit ZBrush, just quit everything. This is horrible. And I actually made a sculpt in like 30 minutes where I started to question my abilities again, because all of a sudden I changed up my workflow. I started doing things sculpting wise differently compared to how I've done it the last 10 years. And I felt like a complete beginner again. And that told me yesterday that I definitely need to keep sculpting like this to become better and faster, which is really motivating in a way. Once I got past the self-loathing and stuff, like, okay, back to it and start sculpting again. But that was really interesting. So I think once you hit these walls where you really start to doubt yourself, try to think about it and think about why that happens, to see if you can actually learn from it.
Yeah, you got kicked in the teeth yesterday.
Yeah, that was...
And I'll do the same the moment I have a desk, and I'll also get kicked in the teeth just as hard. That it's ruthless. Should we do like maybe one more question?
One more question,
or
which we know is a lie, because then it'll be like 5.
Yeah, it will be a few more questions. Okay, does anyone have any more questions? It's almost 10 o'clock here now. We were like, we should finish this off early today. So it don't have to be until midnight. And
Classic.
And then it didn't happen.
No, I mean, I think like touching on the self-doubt, I think it's good because, and one of the reasons I actually posted that thing on Twitter yesterday was also to show people that I also suck. It's like, look, we all suck sometimes. It's never just great. It doesn't matter whether it's like Instagram models or an artist on Twitter with 100,000 followers. It's like, no matter who that person is, they will have shitty days where they can't sculpt, they can't take the right booty picture or whatever. It's like you always fail at some point. The important thing is just to like not let those failures sort of define you, but like keep at it. Yeah. So okay, I sculpted this. So like I can't sculpt the face. Okay, I can also sculpt the body. But yesterday, not a great day. Switching up your routine, that can be tricky. But learn from those experiences and just know that every single person, no matter who they are, how much you idolize them or whatever, they also run into those issues.
Yeah, keep in mind you're seeing people's highlight reel and not their behind the scenes. The reason I brought up this one is because I think first I think it's a good tutorial, but second off, there was somebody who was on our Discord who messaged me and was saying that I watched this one and I just one day I hope to be as confident as Morton when I'm sculpting. And I know that you personally were really struggling with this sculpt.
It was hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever sculpted.
Very tricky. But you're just looking, being like, and you're looking at the video and you're like, damn, that's pretty tight. Yeah, because you're watching like a sped up version of it, and you
An edit where all mistakes are edited
Yeah.
out and everything just works.
Yeah, and you know, you kind of got to do that for a tutorial. Now, it's not like it's not a dishonest representation of it. What you're not seeing in general is when you're not seeing somebody's internal like struggles when you're doing this. I've had it for every single sculpt I've been doing ever, and I still have those 70% of the sculpt where I just feel like I don't know anything about sculpting.
Yeah, we all go through it. Stick with it. I guess it's the best way to get better. It's just not giving up.
And be sure when you are on ArtStation or Twitter, Facebook, and do not directly compare yourself with other people. Like it like comparison is a thief of joy. If you do it, you can do it to find genuine inspiration and connect with other people, but try to avoid going there to be careful about going to these places if you're prone to feel uninspired.
Yeah, don't use it as a means to make yourself more depressed that you aren't as skilled as the people you're looking at. You're not using it right. It should be used for inspiration, or I don't know, when you're sitting on the toilet just browsing and you have nothing better to do, looking for images or GIFs or whatever. Just throw ArtStation into that same group of things to do. But it's like use it as an inspiration or motivation to get better. It's the same thing with artists. Look at artists that you admire. Don't look at them in a way like, oh man, I'm so shit compared to them, I'll never be as good. No, look at it as a challenge. Be like, okay, maybe in a few years I can get to where they are now, and use that to sort of really fuel your fire.
Here's a good question for you, Morton. Should you use if you watched a tutorial and you completed a tutorial, should you put the end result in your portfolio to apply for jobs?
Probably not. Because if a lot of people are doing that tutorial, a lot of people will do that, and then all of a sudden you end up with similar looking portfolios. We've seen it where people have completed some of our tutorials, right? And they straight up have not the same sculpt, but a similar looking sculpt that you can definitely tell was inspired by the thing. So I would take what you learn from there and then do something else with it.
That also includes school projects.
Definitely school projects.
That's just a tutorial, just 10 times the price. If you, like, I've seen this particularly in the UK, there are like a few projects every single student in the UK does. You have like a pair of binoculars and you have like an old grandfather clock kind of thing. And when people see that in the studios, they just go next, because they don't care at all. It's a tutorial and somebody followed a tutorial with clear instructions. It shows no creativity. It doesn't really show any skill because you don't know how much was the tutorial, how much was the artist. So they just skip that straight away.
Yeah, this live stream will be available as soon as we end this. It'll be on the channel and you can just watch it back.
Here's a good question as well. Maybe this is the last one we do. For older junior artists looking to get a job in the studio, is age normally an issue?
No. I've never come across this. I hear a lot of people talking about it. They have questions about it, if there's like age discrimination. Personally, I've never heard about it.
No, here's somebody saying that they had a 3D schoolmate who was like 60 and got a job right afterwards in a small studio. Now, I haven't heard of anyone in their 60s applying for it, but I mean,
that's very rare.
That's very rare. But when I've seen a lot of people who's been in their 30s and 40s who's been doing this, and we worked with people who were, when we were like early 20s, they were like 20 years older than us, and they were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any discrimination like either way. They weren't looking down on us for being younger, and we weren't looking down on them for being older. It was just your colleague, and you treat each other with the respect.
There's skill discrimination. Everything is it's based on your skills. It's what can you deliver. So
Mayra was saying that she's 39. Yeah, well, that's cool. There's nothing.
Yeah, and I'm 29.
Yeah.
So we've got a number in common. Exactly. And so if we were applying for a job, it doesn't really matter age-wise. It's whoever has the best portfolio or the best. You're like the best fit for the workplace.
Yeah, I would just I heard like a good story about this some years ago. We talked about this on YouTube before as well, where it was somebody who was, I think they were like 38 years old, and they were debating whether they should go to university to become an engineer. And they were like, man, I'll be 41 when I graduate. And is it even worth it? And their friend was like, you'll be 41 anyway. You might as well be an engineer. And I thought that was like a really good way of putting it.
I love that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're 39 now, but Peter's saying I'm 72. I'm not 72.
But if you reverse those two numbers, you're almost there.
Almost there. So yeah, I mean, you can be 39 right now, and then in a few years you can be a full-on professional, or you can be the same age and not be a full-on professional. It's all about how much time you dedicate to the craft, and just as importantly, how much you ask for feedback and how much you surround yourself with people who inspire you and can actually push you forward.
To answer your question there, no, I don't think that there should be one master software that should have everything included. First of all, it would be bad for competition. Like I said, they buy up everything. That would be terrible. But also, there's a reason you have specialized software. Specialized software tend to do what they specialize at better than any other software. So no, I don't really think so.
The best thing about having a YouTube channel is that you can spend your evening having a nice stream, and then you can have a bunch of people mocking you for being bald.
There was another question. Oh yeah, it's Josh asking if we're done with the film industry and just focusing on flip normals.
Yeah.
It's been our full-time job for the last 2 years and 3 months now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to help other artists become even better artists. And that's really one of the most rewarding things. It's just seeing people, when people email us or message us saying like, hey, they watched our tutorials over the last couple of years. They just landed their first job thanks to us. When we get one of those messages, I'm like, fuck yeah. That makes like everything worth it. And getting more and more of those messages just really inspire me to keep going and creating more content for everyone.
Every time you get an email like that, it's like you realize why you quit the VFX industry. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it was a fun job, and it's crazy that you can actually contribute to like giant movies, and you can be like, you can walk down a store in Denmark here, go to Bilka, and you can be like, yeah, I did the thing on the cover of that movie. It's completely absurd. But on the other hand, it's not like about having nice stats on YouTube or whatever. It's about genuinely being able to help people, and that's what we're really trying to do. No amount of IMDb credits can really, you can't compensate for that compared to genuinely helping people.
Like nowadays, looking at it, I'm almost like, when I look at games, I'm like, damn, it'd be really cool to actually work as also a character artist in games. But at the same time, this has just become so much bigger now. Like in the beginning, Henning and I were just doing a few tutorials here and there. We did that, next to school, next to our job for like 5 years. But at this point, it's become much, much bigger and about much, much more than just Henning and I doing our thing. It's like being able to actually help other people and not just, because like when you're working on films, while it's awesome, it's also very limiting. You have that gratification where, okay, you see your thing on screen and you get to, do work on your dream projects, which is really cool. You get to challenge yourself. You get to learn a lot of cool things and meet a lot of really awesome people. But at the end of the day, I didn't really feel like I contributed much. It's like, it's like a self-gratification thing when you're working in the industry, I think. But doing this has a much broader, reach.
I remember when, I think it was you, me, and Tom Jones, we watched Batman v Superman together, where Tom and I, we worked on Doomsday. He was the lead texture artist on it. And we finished it. I mean, it was a pretty, well, how do you say it? Not great movie. And we were just sitting there and watching it, and just now the credits are coming. One of the first movies I worked on, which is out, and none of us were in the credits. And we're like, but we made him.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't there. So then you just feel like stabbed in the heart.
Yeah, that one hurts. I think for the first Pacific Rim, I was basically slave labor, but I never got a credit for the first Pacific Rim. That's a fun story. My first film that I ever worked on was Pacific Rim, and one of the last ones was Pacific Rim 2.
I remember when I watched Pacific Rim 1 in the cinema. You know, we were in uni at the time. It was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like I was still into it. I wasn't really into characters. I was like, what if I could do work on the second one? And then what do you know it?
Both of us got to work on it.
That was so weird. Life has a weird way sometimes.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's like I went from making cables and air conditioning units on the first one to doing one of the main kaijus.
There's a Pacific Rim 3. You can go back to making cables.
Love that. I'll just use the cable script that we have available on the Flip Moments Marketplace.
40% off. Yeah. Okay, should we do one more question?
No.
And then
I think we're fine. We've answered everything. As much as I want to help people.
Okay, now people are just saying F anyway, so I think we're kind of
we're now floppy noodles. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. This was really fun. I mean, we're pretty tired at this point because we've been going nonstop on this summer sale, which is currently going 40% off of the Flip Moments place. Oh,
it's
wow.
true.
I'm just toast now. But yeah, this was really fun. And we'll definitely be doing more streams.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get one or two, maybe one more stream in during this summer sale. But it's once stuff frees up a little bit more, we definitely want to be doing more streams regularly. Whether that's portfolio feedback or, I mean, I'm really enjoying just the Q&As because I feel like we can answer a lot of questions that we usually get either on social media or through contact forms. So this is really fun.
If you have any ideas on what you want to see for the stream, maybe the best place to get in touch is on Twitter. I don't know about you, but for me at least, just heading something at Twitter is the best.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, we'll see that right away. So, you know, if you want to see portfolio reviews or Q&As, or, you know, if you have any cool ideas what we can do in the next few days, we are all ears for that.
And yes, the stream will be available as soon as we end it in 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the future.